I was there to have the babies, I would say, and that I
Uh-huh.
was like almost a tool for my husband, right? I was just there as something this was pleasing for him. This was just awesome and great for him. But I did not see it as much as something that it was for me, pleasurable for me. It's not something I ever learned from my family beforehand. And that is just how it played out.
Welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. I'm your host, Dan Purcell, a Christian marriage and intimacy expert and coach. I'm on a mission to help couples have the best sex and most emotionally intimate marriages possible. Our episodes cover topics you've always wondered about and are packed with practical advice designed to help you take your marriage to the next level. Any of you with children are quite familiar with stages of child development. However, less talked about and less understood until recently are stages of adult development. As adults, our bodies may have grown, but our mind and spirits still continue to grow. I love this interview you're about to hear with my friend Tammy. It's an inspiring and relatable story about Tammy and her husband Jake that grew and progressed in their relationship. Tammy talks about her journey to break out of a limiting mindset and to embrace her own sexual desires and needs. She mentions that a turning point was when her husband introduced her to a couples retreat and enrolled them in a course related to sexual development. These experiences opened her eyes to the possibility of change and growth in this area. We also discuss how curiosity, open-mindedness, and gradual steps were key components of Tammy's journey. She describes a process of shedding the need for external validation, allowing herself to change and grow without being dependent on other people's opinions. She also emphasizes the importance of self-reflection, learning how to love herself, and challenging her own preconceived notions. I hope this episode also inspires and gives hope to listeners who wish their spouse would step up more in the sexual arena in their marriage. Listen closely to what Jake did that gave room for Tammy to grow and try new things. If you're looking for support in your growth and intimacy in your marriage, like Tammy and Jake did, I highly recommend you get on our website, getyourmarriageon.com, and book a spot at our upcoming couples retreat in Texas at the end of October. Our retreats are romantic, they're fun, as well as really in-depth. They're a perfect balance of instruction and unstructured downtime to really enjoy a getaway with your lover. It's right around the corner, and spots are filling up quickly, so please register today. I also want to announce and invite you to a special After Dark live workshop that I am doing next week Friday with my friends the Runyons, and it's all about role-play sex in your marriage. We're going to talk about how to introduce role-play to spice up your love life, and if you've ever been curious about role-play, or even if you're a seasoned couple with a lot of experience, you'll still want to join this workshop to learn tips and tricks to incredible bedroom fun and deepen your connection. You can register for this workshop on our website by clicking on Workshops, and then look for the September 15th live workshop about roleplay. Tammy, welcome to the Get Your Marriage On podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm looking forward to this awesome conversation we're about to have. But first, I want to ask you, have you ever felt like someone was intruding in your bedroom? What happened?
Oh, that's a funny story. So, Jake and I have been married for 23 years now. And one of the first years of our marriage, we had a birthday party and we lived in a house that had a swamp cooler. And so the air would kind of blow throughout the house. So we had left the balloons down, not tied to anything, down in the family room. We had gone to bed.
Downstairs.
Yeah. And so we had gone to bed, and all of a sudden in the middle of the night, we start hearing this noise. And, I wake up first and I just sit and listen. And Jake doesn't seem to stir, but this noise keeps coming. And it's like, there's somebody in our house. Something is happening. And so my next instinct is always to nudge Jake, like, Jake, it's
Uh-huh.
your turn. There's something happening. And so,
Protect our family.
yeah, I startled him awake. And so now he's already on panic mode. And I'm like, there's something in our house. There's something in our house. And so he sits and listens, and we're both frozen there. And he is such a great protector. Like, he's always a great defender whenever he hears a noise. And so he jumps out of bed and is just like frantically looking around. We have a mirror that was on our dresser that kind of, you can see the outside, right outside our door. And so he looks in the mirror and there's something in our doorway. So he like starts panicking even more. And so he's just like, what can I grab? What can I grab? Anyway, I think he grabbed a shoe or something and he just like gets all fired up and he goes to the door and he throws the shoe and it is the balloons. They have been on my bedroom. Well,
It was just
it
balloons.
was just balloons, yeah. So needless to say, we, boycotted balloons for quite a while before we allowed them back into our
That's
house.
cool.
When we didn't have a swamp cooler anymore.
Very
Yeah.
good. And how does that contrast to other times you may have been intruded on your bedroom?
Well, we have 3 kids in our house, and, we usually try to be pretty safe, close the door, lock the door, close it, but, one Saturday morning, we just were like, "Our kids are not gonna be up." It was really early. We are early birds in our house, but this was, like, before we would expect them to be up on a Saturday, and, we're just having fun, enjoying ourselves, and I look up, and I look over, and I hear a noise, and there is our daughter right in the doorway. And I probably like did quite the face and looked at her and Jake like panics on his face. And then I like look at him and I look back and she has gone. So he intruded for a minute and then she disappeared. So
I think every parent can relate to that, like, it's one of our fears.
yeah, yeah.
Our kids ever walking in
We
on
lived
us.
it now,
That's
so we're
awesome.
good.
So, you have adult kids now even, and you yourself, you've grown a lot in your 23 years of marriage, and that's what we're talking about today, this personal growth and development, especially personal sexual development. But it's a lot of times when we talk about sex, it relates to food in a lot of great ways. There's a lot of parallels. Is there any food that you used to not like that you learned to like?
Mm, yeah. Actually, my dad was a fisherman and he loved to bring home trout. Like, I still thinking about that trout, it just makes me want to gag. I remember moments of like
Uh-huh.
walking at the door and being like, ugh, we're having trout.
I can smell the trout.
And so I disliked fish for a long time. Fish sticks, nothing. I would not even try it, like, at all.
Uh-huh.
So it is something that I just would not eat. I did not like, and it was not until probably, I don't know, a few years ago that I started to be a little bit brave because people are like, "Try this fish. This is not fishy. You tried one of the fishiest fishes of all the fishes. You need to try
Right,
something
right.
different."
Uh-huh.
So just like people encouraging me to try something new. I tried tilapia. That's one is just like,
Uh-huh.
okay, that is very, very mild. Then I
Uh-huh.
kind of introduced my palates to other things. Salmon, I found that if it was really, really hot, then I loved salmon
Uh-huh.
certain ways. And then sushi has actually become one of my favorite things. It's one of the favorite things Jake and
Oh,
I like to
awesome.
do. And so we now love to go eat sushi together. So that is something that I have learned to love when I used to hate it.
That's cool. And this relates well to what I want to talk about today is learning to like sex. And a lot of us don't like sex partially because of our upbringing. We have good girl syndrome or good boy syndrome. Can you tell us a little bit what you know or what you understand about good girl syndrome and what your experience was like with that? And also your family growing up.
Yeah. So I was the goodest of all the good girls and had the good
Uh-huh.
like good girl syndrome written all over me. Um, good girl syndrome just means that you're trying to do what you think is best.
Yeah.
Everything that you're doing is good. You're living right. You're doing everything right to just be happy. And I was happy, right? Like Jake and I were best friends. We had a great relationship. I was raising my kids right. I was doing all the things that I thought that I should do in how
Mhm.
I was raised. That was, it was just like do the things that you know that you should to be a good person, to leave this life in existence just doing good. And that was what I was living for, 100%.
Yep. But were there some limitations to that?
Yeah, for sure. Like I had a very narrow-minded view of looking at life.
Uh-huh.
And I've gone back and thought a lot. Did I miss out on things because I had good girl syndrome? Maybe in my sex life earlier. But as far as like the way that I felt like I was as a person, I don't think that I was wrong in some of that. But opening up my
Right.
brain and my space to be more open to what good girl syndrome really means.
Gotcha. Now, there's living in line with your integrity, which I think every person should do. and that is good, and that's bringing goodness into the world. That's virtuous. But what were some of the things, maybe in your family that your family of origin that you grew up in, around sexuality that were like the kind of using the fish analogies, things that you didn't like, and then now as an adult you like
Yes.
better?
So I was raised in a home where we did not show much affection. We did not say I
Uh-huh.
love you. We did not, that was just not something that we did. So it was just like we'd go to grandma's house and we did a kiss on the lips, and that was so weird. Or we had to hug
Uh-huh.
certain people and we were told, give them a hug before you leave. And that was so weird because that was not what was the normal in our life. I remember one time I actually dealt with some anxiety younger, and I had a therapist. He told me that I needed to tell my parents that I loved them. And
Uh-huh.
I was so weirded out by that. That sounds like such a
Uh-huh.
funny
Yeah.
thing.
How old were you?
Yeah, but I just was like, "You want me to do what?" And so they brought my parents in and they were both sitting there as well. And he's like, "Okay,
Uh-huh.
it's time." And it was just the most awkward, weird thing that I had ever done. And I still remember it that I just was like, "I love you." Probably didn't say it with a question because it just, not that I ever doubted that I loved my parents, but expressing ourselves that way. My
Uh-huh.
parents showed love and affection in different ways. They showed it by serving, and that was 100%, and they still do, and they're amazing, and they are so much better now than they were. We hug, we say, I love you, but at that time, that was not the case. And so I went into my teenage years and even the beginning of my marriage with this being a weird thing still. That saying, I love you, touching, being affectionate, that was not part of what a marriage was. My thing with a marriage is that I'm supposed to be good, that I'm supposed to be a good wife, that I'm supposed to take care of things and just help and serve and love and be Christ-like. And was my definition of what I should be doing.
What was your attitude about sex or your sexuality at that time early in your marriage?
It was just that I was there to have the babies, I would say, and that I
Uh-huh.
was like almost a tool for my husband, right? I was just there as something this was pleasing for him. This was just awesome and great for him. But I did not see it as much as something that it was for me and great for me and good for me and pleasurable for me. It's not something I ever learned from my family beforehand. And not that any either Jake or I knew at the time either, but that is just how it played out. And that's how I put it for years and years and years, too many years.
Did you have a concept of other women liking sex? And what was your, view of that, like,
I think,
of other women?
yeah, I didn't really, that was not something you talked about at all.
Uh-huh.
So I don't think I
I
knew.
see.
I would not have ever talked to any of my family about that. I would not have talked to my friends about that because I'm a good girl, and that is not what you talk about. And so that was
Right,
very
right.
hush hush and shush and no. So I didn't have anyone to compare against because I never asked.
Gotcha. So you kind of viewed yourself as more of a tool for your husband. Any stories to kinda illustrate what that may have looked like at certain points in your relationship?
Yeah, I'll tell you really.
If you're willing to share?
Yeah, I'll tell you one that's really probably the lowest of the lows, and he would agree too. So I think he'll be
Uh-huh.
all up for sharing this story as well. But because I became that, sex was just all on him, right? It was just when he
Mhm.
wanted it, then it was like, I guess so, right? Like if you need it, and didn't we just do this? And um, so it,
Uh-huh.
it was one point he just came to me. And he's like, okay, I know that you like. Why don't you just bring your phone in and just get on Facebook. You can scroll on Facebook for a minute, or I know that you love to read. I know you love to read. So why don't you just bring in one of your books and I'll just we'll just take care of things while you're doing one of those two things. And I just was
Uh-huh.
like, okay, I guess. Like, yeah, I just have to be there, right? Like I'm just a
Uh-huh.
body, so I guess that works. And then I don't have to really be part of this. So that's fine.
Uh-huh.
And so that was probably the lowest point of our sex life and me understanding that that was so wrong and so not
Uh-huh.
okay. So,
Uh-huh. What do you think Jake thought of that of those
ugh,
experiences?
it broke him. I feel so bad
Uh-huh.
knowing, like, how crushing that was on him, right? To him, he thought something was wrong with him, that he had these needs
Right.
and wants, and I wasn't needing or wanting. So what was wrong with him? And so it's just amazing
Right.
that, the higher desire, the one that wants it more in the moment seems to become or feel so bad about these needs that are just awesome, right? They're good and they're things that we've been given and they're gifts to us, but I did not know that yet at the time. I was
Mhm.
missing out. So he got pretty down and it was just like around that time that it was like, okay, something has to be done. This is not okay. So,
So what were the steps you took? Then what happened? How did you break out of that pattern?
yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't an overnight thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a lots of little
It
steps that led to
Yeah,
that.
it really is baby steps, and it's interesting because now looking back, it went so fast, yet in the moment, it seemed so slow. So have
Oh, yeah,
compassion for
yeah.
yourselves with it, I would say.
Uh-huh.
Like, it seems like
Uh-huh.
such a big, huge thing, and you're like,
Mhm.
"How am I supposed to change? This seems so foreign to me. How can I change my mind about any of this? Because what I know is right."
Right.
And so that is such a really weird give yourself compassion to be okay with these weird thoughts you're having and just know that
Mhm.
it's okay. That's where I got it.
Yeah, it's a little disorganizing. Like, "Wait, this is what I used to hold on to, and it's not serving me
Yeah,
anymore." So you're, like, grasping, and sometimes you come up short, like you're just grabbing air, you're not grabbing on anything
yeah.
solid. It might feel that way,
It
but
it was, and it was really
that's
weird.
the
Like, be okay,
process.
yeah, be okay with that weirdness and not just push it away like, "I can't do this. This is wrong. This is not right. This is not the way I'm thinking." So just, like, starting those little things. Can I be open about this change? Sometimes I
Uh-huh.
think we're just like, "Oh, they got there and they got there so fast." But that's them, and they did have their journey. If you talk to them, they have their journey, right?
Uh,
But I think
right.
just having that open still. Am I open to this? And just like little tiny baby steps one at a time. Am I open to this? It's just little things, like studying and learning and pondering on it and thinking about it and just realizing, am I open to that? Is the what I thought before a truth or is it false? And just really thinking about whether it really is true or false, or if there's more definition of what could be there that you just didn't see before. I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
theme is that I just didn't know all the truth. And my blinders and my way of thinking was so black and white. And there's an entire rainbow out there of truth that is just so good. So,
So, what's your journey then? So you're at the lowest of lows, and Jake's like, "This isn't
mhm.
working." Who made the next step? Who made the first move? How did this change? What resources did you find? How'd you get out of it?
Yeah. So the first thing we did is he brought it up, and I actually was quite offended at first, to be real. Like I was like, "What are you talking about? We are like."
"I'm not good enough for
Right,
you?"
right? Like, I was really
Huh?
hurt at first. Like, how could he bring this up? How could he say something is wrong in our relationship? We have a really, really good relationship, which we did,
Uh-huh.
right? We are just
Uh-huh.
really good friends. We always have been. But he brought it up and he said, I found this course that we really want to do. And he said, I really want to buy it. And I was really kind of like, nope, I'm not doing that. And it wasn't even that much money. But I was like, that's a lot of money.
Was it a fix your wife course or what?
So it was Jennifer Finlayson's Fives, Art of Desire and Art of
Uh-huh.
Love. That's
Uh-huh.
really what got us started. And so
Uh-huh.
I kind
Uh-huh.
of had backed I just said, I'm not doing this." And he said, "Okay, that's fine, but I'm going to." And so he did the first course. He bought them and he messaged me and he just said, "Just so you know, I bought both." And he said, and I'm just gonna do it because I'm gonna listen to both. So anyway, I just got curious and I just thought, this is something that's really important to the person that I really love. And if we're best friends and this is something that he really wants to do and it's already purchased, why not? And so I think the first step, when you ask for the first step, is to be curious, to be open
That's
and
so
curious.
good. Now just to put a timeline on this isn't that long ago, is it?
No,
Maybe 2 years or so?
2 years. Yep.
Yeah. To be open and curious. Great. So you allowed yourself to be curious and not offended.
Yep. And it didn't mean that I
Great.
didn't have moments where I wasn't mad at him anymore, right? Like, there was the
Uh-huh.
moment where I was offended that he brought it up, but because I decided to be curious and open, it was more internal. It was more about the I,
Okay.
which I think
Good.
that you need to make as well. Is this about the he or is it about or the she, or is it about the I and what I can do
Yeah.
to be curious and open about what this means for me? And then which
Right.
leads to the we, right?
Yes. Yes. What are some other steps you took that really helped you realize, wait, the model that I had of sexuality isn't serving my relationship, and this other model might possibly help me? Like, I'm sure that was kind of difficult in the time. Like, what was the next step?
Well, we started working on that first and just trying to be brave. Brave in ways that I was seeing myself different. I was seeing my husband different, and I was trying things on in my brain.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Just
Uh-huh.
being like, how can I change my mindset? How can I be okay with these feelings that seem to be hard, but that I now want? I don't know. I just had to be really brave.
Gotcha. Is it kinda like standing in front of a mirror at a dressing room at a department store? You're just gonna try on an outfit to just see if you like it, and then you might set it to the side of, like, "No," and then try on other thoughts
Yeah.
or outfits, like, outfits as thoughts, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna try on this thought. What would it be like if I tried on this
Yep.
thought? And just kinda going through that exercise?
Yeah, for sure. I did a lot of self-reflection on myself and a lot of relearning how to love myself. I found in this process with the good girl syndrome that I was very much a seeker of validation. And I am also a perfectionist, which often comes with the good girl syndrome, right? And
Yes.
so in this process, in this 2-year process, I'm still working on it, but I have had to learn to stand on my own 2 feet and not lean on what other people think or how they think of me, but how I think of myself. So it was a lot of looking in the mirror and being like, "Okay, what do I think about myself now?"
Right? That's the epitome of good girl syndrome. My behavior and how other people perceive me is how I get a sense of who I am.
Yep.
So I do the things that make me look good to reinforce the idea that I am good
Mhm.
because you want others to look at you as good, and that's how you become good.
Yes.
Rather than I of myself, of my essence, am good,
Mhm.
regardless of what other people think. Like,
Yeah.
it's subtle, but there's a distinction.
So I had short hair for a very, very long time. Like, we're throwing it back to ninth grade that I cut my hair
Okay.
in a very, very short pixie haircut. And my mom had said, it's something that my mom was like, "Oh, yeah, cut your hair. It will just be really good." So I left my hair that way for like 20 plus years. And for years and years, I always was like, I want to grow out my hair. People always told me they loved my hair over and over again. They let me know and they validated that I should have short hair. And so I never was brave enough to grow my hair out. And I put this in a way that I have grown because my hair now is longer than it has ever been in my entire life. And I absolutely
Uh-huh.
love it. And the funny thing, I
Uh-huh.
don't get a lot of people telling me that. And I'm totally okay because before I like needed that. I needed people to be like, "Oh my goodness, your hair is so cute. I love your pixie cut. I wish I could do that." And it does. It looks great short. But I think that part of this process is me learning how to grow my hair out per se and be okay with it and love it myself and not be worried about where other people instead of being like, "Oh, your hair's long." Like, "Yeah, and I love it." Right? Like
Mhm.
owning
Right.
myself that I'm totally okay with how I look 100% and not based off what other people think. I think that is the
That
biggest change.
that is so good. I love that. And it's not that you're not a good like, again, the definition of good girl, we often write off as, of course we wanna be good. We wanna bring goodness into the world. But it's why is the goodness you wanna bring, is it to be seen of men, so to
Mhm.
speak? Or is it really coming from
Yeah,
within, right?
yeah,
That's the point of all
yeah.
this.
I will
Good.
say that. Like, I still am Tammy, right? I still 100% own that I am good and I have integrity and I am doing all the things that I was before. but I am expanding and growing and evolving into even a better person. So that is how I see it now.
Great. So you go through this growth process. You had that course was your first step.
Mhm.
Are there any other resources that you turned to that helped you and Jake grow together sexually through all this?
Yeah. So we actually were super lucky to go to one of the retreats in St. George. So that was
Uh-huh.
last March.
The Get Your Marriage On retreat?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
we got
Yes.
to go to the Get Your
Uh-huh.
Marriage On retreat. Was also like we were nervous about it. We were unsure about it because, what will people think if they hear that we're going to a couples retreat? Like they're going to think our marriage.
It's not just a couples retreat, it's a sex retreat. Uh-huh.
Okay, let's change that. We phrased it as couples retreat at that point, right?
Right.
So what will people think? They'll think that we have sex problems and just all these things.
Mhm.
So we had to, once again, we had to be brave and be like, why are we doing this? What can we see from improving this? And overall, it was like, there is nothing that is going to hurt us from going and continuing to learn. We had done these things, we had continued to study and learn and grow, to be brave in our space, but there's more to learn. And this retreat was awesome. We learned more. We were able to, be with couples, be with Dan and his crew and just learn and grow in that space. And it was so awesome. So that was our next, I think, big step in our education of moving forward.
Tammy, I know you love to read and you soak up information like a sponge. What are some of the books that you've read also that made an impact on you?
Yeah, I have loved that is one thing that I have added is just reading all these books about relationships. I'll just mention a few because I have read quite a bit and they're awesome. Some of the ones that I really like is Come As You Are, and that just talks about the anatomy of a woman. It just helps you really understand about me, like things that I did not really fully understand. It just helped me be like, oh, I'm a woman and I rock and this is awesome. And what a gift my body is. And so I loved it for that. Another book that I really, really have enjoyed is The Practice of Love. And that one just talked
Mhm.
about just being more present, being more mindful, developing yourself in a way that you can be a better self in just improving how you are, which will lead into your sex life and into your marriage. So those are two right off the bat that I just really have loved and soaked in and just are trying to apply. And I share them like crazy too. So all my friends and my husband gets to hear about all these awesome books that I'm reading.
That's good. So let's contrast what's your sex life like before this is like you're scrolling social media in the act to like what does it look like today?
Yeah.
What just contrasting.
Sex is so good, right? Sex is
Uh-huh.
something that is a gift to us. Intimacy, I would even say, like it is
Yes.
something that is a gift that I am finally seeing what a blessing and a gift it is in my life. Like it is such just a wonderful thing that I am discovering and continue to discover and see the strength. Our best friendness that Jake and I used to have is just so much more. We are still best friends, but even more best friends with benefits. I mean, it's probably
Yes.
more of that than it was before, right? But it's something that
Yes.
we
Uh-huh.
both love. Doesn't mean that we're all in all the time, but it's something that we've come to love and that we're coming to cherish and that we're coming to better develop more and more as we figure out what this truly means and that we should accept this gift and use it for ourselves.
If there's any listeners today or married that are themselves or married to a spouse that's still good boy, good girl, meaning they see it very black and white, they really struggle to embrace their sexual nature. Any other advice you'd give them? What advice would you give your past self if you could go back in time and
I say going back to the food thing, if it's you, try the food, right? Like
Uh-huh.
put the plates
Uh-huh.
in front of you and just try little bits of something that you may not, and put it in a way that it doesn't mean that you're going to be all in and it's 100% what you love, but you might just get a glimpse of what you might like. So that would be my first thing is try the things that you might not like. um, be open to that and be open to discussing that with your husband or wife that may be in the same place, right? Like Jake was brave enough to say something. And I'm so grateful that he was, because he could have just been like, well, I guess this is it.
Right.
And so do that. Another thing is, I would say just make sure you're taking baby steps. Like, you'll look back so soon and be like, wow, how did we get here? And that all the people that I've talked to about this same journey, they say the same thing. Like, I don't know how long it takes, but it all of a sudden was there. And not that we're not still developing, but you're open to the change. And all of a sudden you'll look back and you'll be like, I don't know how we were there, but now we're here and it's wonderful and it's glorious and it is so good. I would say do what works for you. These podcasts are awesome and amazing and so good, but the exact thing is not going to be the exact thing for you. So I would say do what works for you. Switch things up to be like, okay, that's a fun idea, but how would it work for me? And how would it work for my husband or wife? And how can we do this together? So have it work for you. Um, and I think be honest. I think that is the biggest thing in a relationship that sometimes gets us stuck, is that we're not 100% honest with our feelings. And I think honest
Uh-huh.
is such a big thing in a relationship. And it's one of the hardest things to get over sometimes, because we are worried about their feelings, but we don't know how they feel. So being honest, they could feel the exact same way. So,
Right. And it's it's more valuable to be honest long term than to hold back apart, and then the intimacy in the relationship
mhm.
deteriorates because you're not showing up. So the 5 tips you give, they all start with B. Bite size,
Yep.
be brave, baby steps, be yourself, and be
Yep.
honest.
Awesome.
So, I wanna hear any black belt sex tips that you might have to
Okay.
offer.
So I'll tell you a little funny date that we did the other day. So my black belt sex tip would be to learn how to laugh in the bedroom.
Alright, good.
So
Laugh in the bedroom.
yeah,
It's not the sanctimonious and serious. We can have play and fun.
exactly. Like, yes, I think sometimes when we have it be too serious, then it isn't fun and we're just looking for checking off those check marks and then it's just not there. So we did this
Yeah.
adventure the other day and we went on a hike first and we had to find things on a hike. And we had to look for, it was a trail. And so we had sat down to dinner and we put together little things that we had to find.
Like a scavenger hunt.
Scavenger hunt. Yep. So that was the theme. We'll call it a scavenger hunt. So the first part of the scavenger hunt was going on a trail and finding things like water or somebody throwing a rock in the river or even dog poop, just funny things that we together decided.
Uh-huh.
And I did tell Jake what the other side of it was, but I just said, okay, we just have to get all these things and put it together. So we went on this walk. And as we found them, we checked them off. And so then afterwards, I
Uh-huh.
said, okay, here's the deal.
How many did you check off?
I think there was 17 of them that we checked off.
Uh-huh.
So I said, okay, here's the fun part. Now we're going to do a different scavenger hunt. So I'm going to take pieces of tape and I'm going to put the same number,
Like Scotch tape?
scotch
Uh-huh.
tape. Yep. The
Uh-huh.
same number of items that we found on our scavenger hunt. I'm now going to put a piece of tape on different parts of my body. Scotch tape is
Uh-huh.
hard to find. So
Uh-huh. In the
in
dark,
the dark,
especially.
yeah. And we have a blindfold. So I even
Uh-huh.
made him be blindfolded. So put him all over. We talked about doing half and half, so you could do half and half if you wanted. But we
Uh-huh.
put him
Uh-huh.
all over, and then he had to find them. And so as he found them, he'd peel them off, and it was just such a fun adventure. We laughed, and it just was just fun to just be playing. The fun
Uh-huh.
part and the thing that was probably best of all of it is when I got in the shower the next morning, I found several pieces of tape that we had not
Uh-huh.
found before that we're still hiding. So
I guess that goes to show you had so much fun
exactly.
that you didn't quite find all the
Yeah.
pieces of
We forgot to now. That's for sure.
tape. Yeah.
That part did not become important anymore.
No, that is so
Yeah.
good. Tammy, thank you for coming to share your story. Thank you for being brave and being really vulnerable today.
You're welcome.
I hope everyone that hears your story is inspired by the courageous action that you took and how you and your husband, Jake, really worked together to build an intimate relationship worth celebrating and being so proud about. without giving up your values of who you really are to your core. You didn't betray yourself in it. You just grew through it. And that's what I love about your story.
Thank you. It's fun sharing it.
Great. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again next time. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in accelerating growth in your marriage, either sexually, emotionally, or spiritually, I want to invite you to work with me in my affordable coaching program called Next Level. More information about Next Level and my fun and sexy apps for couples are available at getyourmarriageon.com. Please also don't forget to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And be sure to tell your married friends. I promise, they will thank you for life. Now go get your marriage on.